Good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's program. So delighted to have all of you here with us. So welcome to tonight's Civic Literacy and Policy Advocacy training. I am Dr. Sabrina Dent, and I serve as the president for the Center for Faith, Justice, and Reconciliation. And I want to acknowledge first that I am coming to you as a guest on Native Accostian lands outside of our nation's capital. Additionally, I want to say Eid Mubarak to those that are Muslim friends that have just observed their holy days, and also Happy Teachers Appreciation Week for those educators that give of themselves daily to our children and make a personal investment through their wisdom and knowledge. And so we're delighted to have all of you here with us this evening. So I want to say, for those of you who are not familiar with the Center for Faith, Justice, and Reconciliation, we're an independent nonprofit educational organization and theological think tank that's housed on the campus of Union Presbyterian Seminary, in Richmond, Virginia. And we're a community of scholars, faith leaders, organizers, and citizens who are dedicated to being and building a beloved community. And when we say beloved community, we mean everyone. And so we're committed to building that beloved community in Virginia and beyond, but also embarking on a bold journey of living our faith and advancing justice and building sustainable paths for authentic reconciliation and community. The center offers a variety of educational programs, such as tonight's civic literacy training for students, for congregations, for community and faith leaders, as well as public officials that advance justice and build cultures for reconciliation. We recognize that this work takes all of us, which is why we have collaborated in tonight's endeavor, because it's necessary for us to do this together in building the beloved community, but also to take action. We can't do this by ourselves. And so I'm excited that we've had the opportunity to partner with our friends from Union Presbyterian Seminary on the Charlotte campus through the Center for Social Justice and Reconciliation. And so with that, I would like to invite Reverend Dr. Rodney Sadler to join us in this conversation this evening by just giving a few remarks. And it's so many of you, I'm so excited. I'm trying to see if Reverend Sadler is on right now, and I believe he is. Wonderful. Reverend Sadler, we would like to invite you to join us on screen.
Hello, Sabrina. Please forgive me. I am dressed in my Philadelphia Eagles attire, so forgive me for being less than formal this evening. It's wonderful to be with you all. It's wonderful to be able to be part of the significant event as we are in a world that's in flux, a nation that has been torn apart by different issues of voting suppression and the expression of our desire for voting rights. This is a necessary conversation. How do we begin to fight back? How do we begin to push back and find ways to reach out to new communities and to new voters? And so I'm just grateful that you have invited us to participate with the Center for Social Justice and Reconciliation to be part of this larger effort. And hopefully what this conversation will begin to do is not only inspire people to get involved, but let them know that there are things that they can do to be involved. As we listen to people like Andrea Miller talk all the time, it inspires me. I remember how Andrea started off the Center for Common Ground, how she started off these notions of democracy centers, how she began with an idea and began to say that if we just utilize the best of our technologies, if we mobilize the people across our country, if we begin to come together, work together, we can achieve great things. And we were able to see what some of those great things look like when we saw the miracle in Georgia at the end of the 2020 election. We're able to see this great thing that took place even after that with the election of two members from a party that was thought to be irrelevant in that state, taking positions of power in that state for the first time in years. In essence, what I'm suggesting is that we have the power to make change. We just need to know how to come together to produce that kind of change. So I'm grateful for this conversation tonight. I hope that it brings us together and gives us a sense of empowerment, letting us know that we have the power in our hands, the tools in our hands to effectuate change. I say all that, and then I'll just end with a simple, go Philadelphia Eagles.
Oh, Reverend Sattler, thank you so much for being a part of this conversation this evening and for joining us. And we're so grateful for the work that you're doing through the center and your commitment to social justice and reconciliation. And as you said, like, this is a very critical conversation that we're having tonight. This training is so important and it impacts so many areas of our lives. And so I'm delighted that we've partnered with you and that we have Andrea Miller and the Center for Common Ground with us tonight. And so before we go further, I want to just give a little bit of housekeeping for those that are not aware. So as you can see, we can all see each other. We are on a Zoom meeting, and this is what our facilitator wanted, for us to be able to engage with one another, and it's so important. So for those of you that feel comfortable, feel free to continue to stay on camera. If you prefer to be off camera, that is perfectly fine as well. You will also notice that this conversation is being recorded. So everyone has been muted upon entry. At the appropriate time, like during Q&A or any other time where we're asking for feedback, you'll be invited to come off mute to speak, but we ask you to stay on mute during the time that Ms. Miller is presenting. At the same time, we ask that we know that the chat will be busy at times, and we ask you to be courteous with your remarks and in your sharing as well. And so, and we also ask this, that when we get to the portion for Q&A, that you keep your questions concise. We want to make sure that there is enough time for everyone's question to be answered and explored. And that also we want to make sure that we hear from different people in this space, because there may be so many questions that will arise. And you might also have a question that someone else has, which will help a person that might be a little bit more shy than you may be. So, so we want to say, just keep those things in mind as we move forward in our time together. And so with that, I want to introduce tonight's Civic Literacy Policy Advocacy Training Facilitator. And that is Andrea Miller. She is the founding board member at the Center for Common Ground and executive director of People Demanding Action. She was the founding president of the National Women's Political Caucus of Virginia and a member of the Democracy and Governance Working Group of Virginia Green, the Virginia Green New Deal. Andrea is, and I want to add to that, she's also a member of Faithful Democracy, which is where I I've met her. So we've worked together and pushing some things forward, especially voting rights earlier in January. That Andrea is an IT and political director and a digital election strategist. She designs and administers digital phone banks and texting programs, which is so important for people if you don't know about it. Andrea, I hope that you will talk about that in your presentation, because it is important that people know that there are other ways to engage civically as well. Also from 2013 to 2015, she led the Progressive Roundtable on Capitol Hill, bringing together members of Congress, activists, and nonprofit leaders. Her expertise is in voting rights, climate, and equal rights, and the Equal Rights Amendment. She has successfully advocated for legislation on both the federal and the state level. You see why I have her here tonight? And in 2008, she was the Democratic nominee for the Virginia 4th Congressional District. So I want to say to everyone tonight, and no matter where you sit politically, right? No matter what your beliefs are, this morning's headlines served as a reminder that we all need to take action, and we do not have the luxury of sitting on the sidelines quietly and doing nothing to protect our human or civil rights, that we all must engage in some way. And so we, as the beloved community, which includes all of us, must develop and enhance our civic literacy skills to take action on a policy level, whether it's local, whether it's state, or whether it's federal. We have a responsibility to take action. And so tonight, Ms. Miller will equip you with the tools to empower you to be an advocate in your community and to mobilize others to do the same. So I want to say thank you again for joining us this evening. I encourage you to take great notes and share those notes with others. And with that, I want to say, Andrea, the floor is yours. Thank you for being with us.
Well, Sabrina, thank you so very much. That is and was a wonderful introduction. Now, when I am done, I will share the slides that I am going to show tonight so that people, you will be able to share them with your own groups. And or if you belong to another group and most of the members weren't able to join tonight, you can invite me to present this to your group. So what I'm going to do now is get started. I'm going to share my screen and we are going to walk through civic literacy and policy advocacy. So what we're going to be looking at is, I call them the three verbs. When we are advocating for something, we're first going to need to educate people on why it's important. Then we're going to need to agitate them. They're going to need to get mad. And once they get mad, then they're going to want to get active and they're going to want to do something. We're going to be looking at that. And then some of the tools and activities we're going to be looking at are op-eds, digital advocacy, a social media toolkit, the press conference, and lobbying. And I promise you, in light of what people unofficially heard today, which I knew was coming, you are going to see examples very, very shortly of all of the above. Now, educate, advocate, and then activate. If people do not even know there's a problem, it's going to be hard to get them to come and work with you on solving it. The first people you always start with are the immediate people that you know. So if you're running for office, they always tell you, go and talk to your friends and family about running for office, get them to volunteer and be your first donors. If you are going to have to work on moving an issue forward, go and get your friends. Now, I've worked on something called the Equal Rights Amendment, which is a constitutional amendment for 56 years. I've been working on that since I was a girl of 11 when my mother introduced me to it. When you are advocating for policy, sometimes it is a very, very, very long quadruple marathon. It is rarely going to be a sprint. Now, there are a number of ways to let people know that something is happening. There will be newspaper articles, and an op-ed is something that you are going to write. There can be petitions. For petitions to be effective, you are going to need to have an email list, or you're going to need to know somebody that's got an email list. Or, all right, the old style petition, or you are going and tabling at markets and or knocking on doors. Digital petitions are when you're going to need an email list or need to know somebody that has one. A lot of people are on social media these days, especially young people. Everything they do, they believe there is a need to share it with the world. Well, that may not be how you live your life, but if you have a young person and that is how they live theirs, you might want to enlist them to help you move your issue out into the social media first. There are press conferences where you get together, maybe a couple of people, you invite the press so that you can make an official statement about what is going on and what you want to see happen. And then there is also lobbying, where you go to the people who have the ability to give you what you want and you demand that they do so. It is no accident that we named our 501c4 people demanding action. We weren't asking, we weren't begging, we were demanding that the people in power act and give us what we want. Now, op-eds. If the problem
Excuse me,
is new.
Andrea,
Yes.
did you mean for your slides to be advanced? Because we're looking at one screen. There we go. Now we see your slides.
It's
Okay.
running slowly. Yes.
Thank you so much.
Yes. I live in rural Virginia. And so about this time, all my neighbors are getting on the internet.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
So anyway, yes, I will talk a lot. So normally the slide will catch up with me. So op-eds, if the problem is new, or even if it's old, and not a lot of people have the most up-to-date details, it is very useful to do an op-ed, to get something in print where people can go and look at it, they can read it over and over again and wrap their brains around it. Now, here's the thing about the op-eds. Most communities have a local paper, and it's probably going to be easier to get your op-ed in the local paper than it's going to be to get it in the New York Times or the Washington Post. Just saying, you can try, but it's probably going to be easier to go local. Also, if the issue is local, you're really going to want it in the local paper so that people that you don't know that are your neighbors become aware. Whoa, I didn't realize this was going on in our community. Well, it is. Daily and weekly publications may also give you the opportunity to write a follow-up piece or a response, especially if they get a lot of comments. And the note about op-eds, while they're generally limited by the number of words you can use, normally they're going to be longer than a petition. Now, I do or did a lot of digital advocacy, and I was able to build a mailing list from 183 people to nearly 500,000 in the space of 3 years by using digital advocacy. If you've got a mailing list, even if it's only a couple hundred people, people know other people. So when you create your digital petition and you send it out and people read that and they're like, I don't believe they did that. Let me sign the petition and say, yes, I support whatever it is. Frequently, people may go, you know what, I want to forward this to like my friends and my family, or let me just post this out on my Twitter feed or my Instagram, TikTok, whatever it is. And now suddenly people that you don't know are seeing your petition. They are equally outraged and they are signing up. In the days when I was doing a lot of digital petitions, we would frequently do what are called partner petitions, where we would get a group of organizations to go together and we would all send out the same petition. When you do partner petitions, we could run our numbers up. The largest number we ever got was probably about, maybe 2-3 million. And that was over the space of several months. The first 2 days that we put the petition out, and it was all about the Trans-Pacific Partnership trade deal, which we were against, we got 100,000 signatures through 7 organizations. So if you are outraged and there is something that's happened, can you get other groups that have a similar mind political bent as you to share your petition with their email list? Because if they email it to people on their list, that is their official endorsement of what you're saying, and or move it out on their social media, whereas you may have some followers in common. Each organization is going to have followers that are just at this point not following you. Now, I see a lot of people making a very common mistake when they do digital advocacy, and that is they will use something where they don't get the names. You want to build your list. You want to know who are the people that are supporting my issue so that you can move them up to the escalating level of activity. A petition normally is your name, your email address, and maybe your zip code. That basis is going to get you people that potentially now will join you at an event, will lobby their local representative or their federal representative if the issue is federal, or will join you at a press conference. So it is very important that when you create a digital action, you get all the names. So we are looking at the educate and the activate. So number one, when we educate, we want to ask people to do something really, really easy that they know how to do. You don't start with the biggest ask. Let's go lobby our member of Congress. Well, I just found out like 5 minutes ago that this was a thing. I don't know that I'm ready to go talk to a member of Congress about it. So start with something really easy. That easy thing should be easily shareable so you can build your member base. And then that allows you, when you get ready to take the next action, it won't be you out there by yourself with a sign. You'll have friends. All right, at this point, I am happy to take questions on those very, very basics. So do we have questions? All right, I'm looking at, all right, I see a lot of comments. Don't see any questions in the chat yet. Oh, is that a question?
I have a question.
Yes,
Okay, I can't tell if you can see me.
I see you, ER Ship. Hello.
Hi there. It's part question, part comment. When it comes to press releases and press conferences,
Yes.
I must say I'm a journalist and I've been a journalist for about 40 years. When you are inviting the press to come to your event, that shouldn't be your first step. You need to have made some contact with specific members of the press first, so that you know that there's someone who's interested in your issue and they're likely to come, or at least likely to have their editors or producers assign someone. So people often make the mistake of sending out a press release without having made some contact first. And a press release that's sent out generally goes into the dustbin. So you might want to say a little bit more about press conferences.
We have a whole section on press conferences with press releases. In another life, when I was a regional organizer for MoveOn.org, I did a lot of press events. And I remember one of the comments that my grandniece, who was probably 7 years old at the time, made when someone asked her if she was excited seeing her aunt on TV. And she did that little eye roll that only 7-year-olds can do. And she goes, Aunt Andrea is always on TV. All right, all right. Next phase, talking about the types of digital advocacy that you may see and probably will be seeing in the next couple of days. One I call the simple petition. And when you get one of those in your email, normally they only want 3 main pieces of information. They want your name, they want your email address, they're building their email list, and they want your zip code. Why do they want your zip code? Because if they're using a sophisticated petition tool, it's figuring out what your legislative districts are. Ooh. All right, now, when someone sends you a petition, be aware that petition isn't really going anywhere. They are collecting email addresses, and it's not until they deliver the petitions that someone actually gets them. All right, so if they're only asking for your name, your email, and your zip code, the person sponsoring the petition is list building. that Petition isn't going anywhere. Now, the bigger type of petition, I call it direct email advocacy. They are going to send an email from you to a person or organization that has the capacity to give you what you want. When they're doing an email, they're going to require more information. They're going to want your name. They're going to want your address. If it's federal, they're going to want your phone number, because that is what is required on a congressional website if you were to fill out the form that is on their site. Now, direct email advocacy goes straight to whoever's name is on that email advocacy. You see this used a lot for federal legislators and state legislators, especially when in the state, the General Assembly is in session. Congress is in session 11 months out of the year. So you may see these at any time for a congressional action. Now, software. There is a lot of different software that you can use that will let you create petitions and direct email advocacy. And I've got the names of some of the platforms on the screen. Action Network, which is free. That's correct. It is FREE, as in it doesn't cost anything. New Mode, Color Change, MoveOn.org, Change.org, One Click Politics. These are only some of the vendors or products that you might see in the next couple of days with various petitions and direct email advocacy. And I picked a sample, and you'll notice on this one, it's a petition, and it got 88,695 signatures. Sign the petition to President Biden, speak out and lead on voting rights. This is an example of a partner petition. So when you look at it, it says we're petitioning President Joe Biden. It is sponsored by Daily Host, which is an online blog. And then here are the other organizations that also sent out this exact same petition to their email list, which is how they fairly quickly built up 88,000 signatures. If you do a petition and you send it out on your own, doubtful you're going to get 88,000 signatures. And that's why the big organizations never do anything alone. We do everything with coalition partners because we want to make the biggest splash possible. Here's another sample petition. Notice this one is a lot prettier than the other one. This is a state petition that we put together last year for Georgia. And it says, tell members of the House Education Committee to oppose, and we give them a couple of bills. And now notice, since this is email advocacy, we're asking for name, email address, and their actual address, city and zip, because this software is going to figure out who their legislators are, and it is going to send them an email. Now, when we are getting ready to do lobbying or no, advocacy power tools, a lobby team, you can have 3 or 5 people, but that doesn't show there's a lot of support for a bill. What we would do is we would do a digital petition so that we would have a few thousand, tens of thousands, maybe 100,000 signatures. And then when we would go and lobby, we would be delivering the signatures, and that would show legislators that whatever we were lobbying on, we were not just 3 or 5 little people that supported this. There were a lot of people back home that supported this. And again, Action Network allows you to email, it's free. One-Click Politics and New Mode, which are not free, they're fairly expensive, not only allow you to email, but they allow you to tweet, and they also allow you to do patch-through calls. What's a patch-through call? It puts a number on the screen and it says, call your legislator. You put your phone number in, the system dials the legislator's office, and then it calls you back and patches you in so that you don't have to try to dial the number. We invested in these tools because we did a lot of work around Social Security, and we found out that a lot of our seniors did not have long distance, so they couldn't call DC. So we got a tool where all they had to do was put in their phone number, and then our system called them back, and we paid for the phone call. So these are the advocacy power tools. Action Network, free, but it's email only. One-Click Politics, New Mode, Phone to Action. There are some others. Now, if you live in Virginia, you may be aware that in 2020, Virginia finally, or 2021, early 2021, ratified the Equal Rights Amendment. So here's a sample of a state email advocacy campaign. We used to use Action Network, as I said, because it's free. Now, when we were doing legislation about voting rights, this is an example of a phone advocacy tool. Call your Virginia legislators, vote yes for restoration of rights. So I put in my address, here is my legislator, or was my legislator. I put in my phone number, and then when I would click start call, their system would call Buddy Fowler, patch me through, and then this script would be on the screen for me to read the script. Any questions on digital advocacy, either petitions, email advocacy, phone advocacy?
Yes, Andrea, there's a question in the chat from Reverend Rochelle Andrews that reads, what is the best way to introduce these tools to our congregations, especially the seniors who have interest but not as tech savvy?
Probably the best way is if you can do uh, Zoom meeting or in church, just show people the tools and make sure they understand the issue first, and then explain, we now have a way, rather than having to go and knock on everybody's door to get them to sign a petition, we're going to just email it to you. When you click on the link, you're going to put in your name, your email address, and your zip code. And when you click sign the petition is all signed. So we have had a lot of luck with seniors on petitions and even direct email advocacy. And what we discovered is people were very hesitant to do a phone call action. So we always do a combination email action. People are comfortable putting in their name and address and pushing a button. They get a little uncomfortable when they're going, okay, wait a minute, I'm going to have to call the legislator's office. And they're like, what if they ask me a question? They're not going to ask you a question. You're going to call, you're going to read the script, and then they're going to mark down you were a call either for something or against something. Again, when people have never done it, that interactive communication can be a little daunting.
Right, I agree. And on that note, Ms. Miller, will you talk about like just a little bit about the text banking or the phone banking? Because in my experience, the text banking, a lot of people think that it would just be young people that are involved, but every time I've done text banking, I've observed that it was more seasoned people in life who had the passion for being engaged and didn't necessarily want to go door to door, and they were willing to learn like how easy it was to use the technology. And like you said, no one's gonna, well, sometimes you do get questions back and some inappropriate comments too. So,
Yeah,
but,
right.
right. But it's very simple for people to engage. So can you speak to that? If that's
I certainly can. I
Okay,
certainly
thank you.
can. Now, normally what we are doing using these tools is we are generally doing advocacy work. We want an elected official to support something or oppose something. We are beginning to see text banking and phone banking being used for advocacy. So what that looks like, we do a lot of phone banking. So when all those bad voting rights bills were showing up in state legislators, we set up phone banks to call people in the districts of the legislators introducing these bad bills. And when we had done the election in 2020, we had asked people what was their voting plan. So we knew if they were going to vote by mail, if they told us they were going to vote by mail. So we targeted those specific people. And basically, we're a 501c3. So we don't lobby anymore. But what we can do is we can tattle. So we called the constituents of these legislators and we said, you voted by mail in the last election, right? Oh, yes, I voted by mail. Thank you for walking me through it. Did you know that your legislator is one of the people who put in a bill to end vote by mail? They did what? Would you be interested in sharing your thoughts with your Well, I certainly would. Hang on, we will patch you through. So that's what we did with phone banking. And one of our volunteers in Connecticut, you don't normally think of Connecticut as being a voter suppression state, but Connecticut did not have anybody could vote by mail, and early voting to them was on election day, polls were open 14 hours. So they wanted to contact voters and ask voters to send an email advocacy alert to their legislators saying, I support vote by mail and early voting. Now, with texting, we have a very large group list, and then we pre-write the scripts. And we have, these are standard questions that we expect people to ask, so we have replies. And then we have what we call alternate responses. These are things that people might say that are not answering the questions that we ask. One of those is always rude language. They are saying something rude and they shouldn't be saying that. Another one is you've got the wrong person. So everything we think that might come up, but it isn't a direct answer to one of our questions, we create an alternate response. So when you text bank for an organization like mine, it's not like you're manually sitting there typing text to individuals. A name pops up, you click send. And texting with these new modern programs, you can text about 500 people in an hour. There's no way you could call 500 people in an hour. And when people respond, then you go and say, oh, they said they wanted to early vote. I'm going to send the early vote reply. This is when your county early votes. This is where it is. And here's the phone number of the registrar if you have a question. So a small team of texters, about 15 people, can text 100,000 voters in about 5 days. No way they can make 100,000 calls. And number one, we protect your phone numbers so nobody sees your phone number. And we are paying for the text messages. So you're not paying for the text messages. So I'm glad you brought that up, Sabrina. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Miller. And it's easy once people learn how to do it. So I know the first time I did it, they said I could do so many, a couple of hundred in an hour. And I was like, whoa, wait a minute, how? But it's very easy. And so there's some additional questions. We can hold those if you want to continue with the content, or if you want to go ahead and address the questions.
I will answer the questions. We are moving along nicely with time.
Okay, great. So there was a question in the chat by Kelvin he was asking how effective, I'm trying to go all the way back up. How effective is this tool in terms of the response time? Do you think it's faster using some of these digital advocacy tools that you've mentioned? And then also I want to add to that a question that someone asked is they asked the question, Elder Norris asked the question, could you explain the importance of this information also being used in local elections?
It's harder. You can use petitions in local elections, contacting local representatives, city council, county council, and things like that. You're going to need to print out the name and address, or either put them on a thumb drive and then go give them to them and say, we've got 900 of our fellow citizens who share my concern about XXX. When it comes to doing direct email advocacy, that is normally very expensive and also only available for larger cities, like the city of Chicago, Charlotte, the city of Richmond, for some of these tools is considered too small. We can't do direct email advocacy to the city of Richmond. In like Georgia, Fulton County, yes. Dougherty County, no way. So the vendors are very selective. I mean, after all, there are only 50 states and there's 535 members in Congress. That's very finite. When we look at how many counties there are in the United States, I believe there's something like 9,500 counties. And then each county has 3 to 5 members on city council. Those numbers and names to keep them up to date, that is just too daunting a task. So all of these tools do federal elected, state electeds, and some of them will do big cities and big counties.
Thank you. So one more question before you move forward. The question that has been posed is, how can you differentiate between legitimate lobbying or petitions via text and text scams? So, oh, go ahead.
The legitimate ones, the company is always front and center. This petition, when I showed you the joint petition, when you went to that petition, you saw the names and the cities and states where all these organizations were located. So it's like, oh, okay, I can see who all these organizations are. And that's the way most of the petitions are. They normally fly an organization's logo. And when they text them to you, when you click on the link, you're normally going to see the organization's logo. Now, when you get a text message, legitimate companies always say, hi, so-and-so, I am whatever their name is from, and they give you an organization. And even if you've never heard of the organization, you can go Google it before you click on a link or anything they sent you.
Thank you so much. So those
You
are all the
are
questions
very
that we have right now.
All right. Well, we're going to move into the next section.
All right.
All right. Social media toolkits. I know so many people who are on Twitter and have very little idea how to actually use it. So they came up with this idea of creating a social media toolkit that normally consists of a post, or it might be a series of posts. And then there may be images, or there might be a series of images that all you have to do is log into your Twitter account or your Facebook or Instagram or whatever you're on, and then either add this image and send it out to whoever is following you, or add this post, copy and paste it in, and send it out to whoever is following you. Now, the reason organizations do that is they want to see if they can trend. Anywhere from number 1 to like number 5 is considered very, very good on Twitter. So the post is going to have a hashtag in there. So it might be #SaveRoe or something like that. So they can periodically search for where is #SaveRoe or #VRA Now, Voting Rights Advancement Act Now. Where is that in the overall number of hashtags that are being active right now on Twitter. So they'll create a social media toolkit. They'll give you 2, maybe 3 or 4 posts, and then they'll give you maybe a couple of images, and then you just share them on your social media. Now, if you've only got 3 followers, then 3 people are going to see it. But who's to say that one of your 3 followers doesn't have 10,000 or 100,000 followers, and they go, oh my word, I've got to tell everybody about this. And then they share it out to their very, very large list. So when you really want to spread the word fast, you're going to build the social media toolkit, and then you're going to get it to the social media director of all of your coalition partners. Now, I don't know if any of you have heard the term storming or Twitter storm. A Twitter storm is when a group of organizations agree we are all going to tweet the same messages from 3 p.m. to 4 p.m. on Thursday. That's a Twitter storm. So that they're trying to trend is what they're up to. Why you want media coverage. So everything we talked about before was the educate. Now we're on the agitate. Now we want to get our news, our message out to more people than just the people that we know and the people that we know and the people they know. We want total strangers to find out about this and be just as outraged as we are. So media coverage provides visibility, helps get the message and the issues out. When something is in the media, it automatically gives it, even though in some terms it really shouldn't, a certain level of legitimacy. Well, it was in the paper, I saw it on the news, and they wouldn't lie on the news. It was on the news, it has to be true, right? And then when you get something in the media, many local outlets have archives so that if people miss it on the day when they really put it out, as they're going through the archives, they can find it. Writing a press release. Now, there's no specific length or number of paragraphs, but a press release, I normally tell people, you want to be concise. Let's get it to one single space page. If it is 4 pages, that is not a press release. You have written an article, and a long one at that. Key information should be comprehensive, fact-based, succinct, and the only time it can be subjective is when you're listing a quote from preferably someone that most people will recognize. So normally when companies do press releases, it's from the executive director, maybe a board member, someone that might have a little more recognition than, say, the communications director who wrote the press release. So press releases have a structure. They normally should look a certain way. A marketing company that was one of our consultants wrote this. And I know when you look at this, people are going, oh my goodness, this looks really, really, really hard and complicated. It's got a lot of pieces, but when we actually get to the press release, it's not that bad. So when you're writing a press release, the audience that you want to reach, what are their interests? What are their objectives? You're going to want to put things in there that will attract their attention. You want them to get educated so they can go, oh, this just can't stand. We've got to do something about this. That's the emotion you want to create. And then you want to highlight the most important information. If there's an event involved and you want the press to come to an event, make sure that you have clearly explained the date, time, and place of the event. Now, media follow-up. Whenever we sent a press release, one of the reasons I was in the paper and on TV so much is we had a press list, and we would call through that press list and let people know that we were sending a press release, and we would pitch or sell the story. And then when they got the press release, we would follow up. Did you get the press release? And frequently they would say they didn't, so we would send it again. And then I always told people, when you want media to cover your event, you need to court the media. You don't just email them the press release and never bother to contact them. You are going to want to reach out. You're going to want to pitch the story. You're going to want to say there's going to be really interesting and amazing visuals. That's a clue too. And bring a photographer too. Generally, the press does not want to come and cover a meeting where everybody's just sitting at the meeting and they're all behaving nicely. Nobody wants to read about that. The press doesn't really want to cover that. But if you got a great protest, even if there's not going to be a lot of people, but the people there are going to have some amazing signs saying some amazing things, that could be worth an interesting photo with a relatively short story underneath. So again, pitch the story to the media like ER said. Don't just send a press release and assume the media will come. They probably won't. And then after you sent the press release, normally on the day of the event, follow up in the morning. That's when a lot of assignments get made. And call the editor, or if you've got a relationship with a reporter and you want to build a relationship with the media, then again, you're going to pitch, will you be there? Now, this is the next thing. Many people fall down. The media shows up and there's a bunch of people there, and the media, they've never seen you. They don't know what you look like. They're just watching to see, all right, who's in charge of this stuff? Have a media greeter. And the media greeter has no other job than to look for the media. And when they find the media, bring the media to you and make a formal introduction. You're going to give the media your business card, and hopefully they brought a card as well so that you can again follow up. Remember, this is all about establishing a relationship with the media. Now, media tips. Lead the media, don't let the media lead you. Make sure that the 5 or 30 seconds or whatever you're going to get, if it's on television or on the radio, reflect the message you intended. Now, my media goes back to 2007 when we were in the middle of the Iraq War. And invariably, whenever I did an event, I would have 200 people at my event, and there would always be one lone protester across the street. The media would want to go over and talk to the one protester, ignoring the 200 people at the real event. Because again, it's like, oh, there's conflict here. What's going on? So whenever the media asks you about the one lone guy standing across the street, then yes, we know we have a protester, but the most important point is we are here because you never focus on the protester. You know why you're there. You focus on why you're there. I already mentioned visuals. Pictures are worth 1,000 words. Make sure somebody is bringing large signs. Oh, the signs we are going to see regarding Roe are going to be amazing. And that's going to be on both sides of the aisle. And then you always want to make sure the signs that people bring are on message. You don't want somebody there where you're doing a voting rights event and somebody is there with a Roe v. Wade. That's not what this event is about. You're off message. Yeah, we support you, but that's not the message here. That's not our purpose. We will come to your event when you have that at the end of the week. And then final press conference tips to avoid being misquoted. Anything really, really important, especially if you've got detailed facts and figures, have that all printed off and you're prepared to hand that to the media. Make sure they get your contact information and you want to get the crew members' contact information and get the information from all the reporters who attend your event. All right, and we're still doing really good. Are there any questions at all about media and press conferences? I love that. Yes, document the event. Make sure you have a photographer. Yes, 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 yes. And again, like I said, this is somebody, whenever I did an event, I got the media. And I will never forget an event that I didn't do. They sort of stole my event because they didn't want us saying, I forget what it was, that we were in support of impeachment. Now remember, this is 2007. So they didn't want us doing an impeachment event. So they took the event away from me. I had such a good relationship with the reporters that when I showed up, all the reporters left the main event to talk to me. Media is about relationships. All right, now, what we're going to talk about next is one of my favorite things. I was on the Hill from 2010 to 2019. Effective lobbying is when you are going to activate those folks who have been signing petitions, who have been emailing their legislators, or it could be a corporation, whatever it is, and maybe they've been making phone calls. Now we're going to show up in person with some demands. Now, lobbying has a very, very simple goal, and that goal is turn a no into maybe, turn a maybe into a yes, and turn a yes into what can I do to help build support. So whenever you lobby and you ask that question, do we have your support? Whatever they say, you are going for the next level. Now, when I would lobby, my specialty became lobbying Republicans, people on the other side. My son is a lifelong Republican. And one of the things he said to me some years back was, progressives and Republicans, we actually agree on a number of things. He calls himself a conservative. He said, you just come at us wrong. So he would take whatever the talking point was, he agreed with us, and then he would write it in conservative speak. All right. And we got to the point where I could get conservatives on my bills quicker than I could get Democrats. So anyway, the art of lobbying. It's an ongoing campaign with a series of planned actions coordinated to have a desired effect. We want them to pass this bill, or we want to kill the bill. So normally when it's legislation, you're trying to pass it or you're trying to kill it. There's pretty much nothing in the middle. Lobbying is both an art and it's also a science. Now, when you go and lobby, normally there's going to be a team of you. I used to lobby by myself. I would put a team of 5 people on the Hill. There's 435 House members, 100 senators. On a bad day, we would visit 70 offices. On a good day, we would visit 140 offices. So that means we're not spending a lot of time in each office. So if you're going to go together as a group, and most of the time we were all very experienced, we just went as individuals. But when you go as a group, you need to have a plan. So who's going to run the meeting? Who is going to tell the story about why this is important? Preferably it's a constituent where they can say, I'm a constituent and I live in, and this is why this is important to me. You need a person who can make the direct ask. Well, Senator so-and-so, do you support our bill? And then shut the hell up and wait for their answer. You need the educator who is going to present, here's our research, here's our facts. Normally it's 1 page, don't give them a book. And then the secretary, just like when we were doing the meeting, collecting the cards of the staffers so that when the meeting is all over and we're back in the office, we can thank them for taking time with us and then do the next level ask. So, I mean, there's always a plan to go to the next level. Now, running the meeting.
I have a question for you.
Yes.
Before you go to running the meeting, can you speak to the importance of everyone being committed to that process, and in terms of showing up for the team meetings, or at least having a plan B if a person doesn't show up? Because I've been in situations where we had lobby visits and the main person didn't show up and we had to like shift gears in that moment. So can you speak to the importance of people either being prepared to step in if something, because also life happens, right?
Yes.
That, for someone to step in, or that it can be unnerving at times if it's a person's first time doing it, that they have that support of the other individuals that may be more seasoned in doing so.
Well, number one, I'm going to talk about new people that are lobbying for the first time. You want to give them a very minimal speaking role so that they can watch, they can observe. Maybe their role will be to collect the business cards of the people you're meeting with and hand the business card to the people. This is who is in our lobby group. So I would always make sure their verbal interaction requirements were very minimal, and that it was normally never on the details of the legislation. And again, it's like you said, life does happen. So normally, whenever we were building the lobby team, as long as you had the facilitator and the person who is going to make the ask, you are probably going to be all right. So an ideal lobby team is 3 to 5 people. So that normally if you lose one, as long as it's not the person who's supposed to make the ask, you're probably going to be just fine. All right, now, introductions, 2 minutes. We don't want anybody's life story. Hi, I'm Andrea Miller. I'm in Caroline County, and then so on and so forth. Why we are here. We have collected 200,000 petitions from your constituents in support of blah, 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 whatever it is. And then the constituent, I live at so-and-so, and as one of your constituents, I can tell you why this is critical to the people who live in this area. And they're going to do a very short story. Now, if you have people where the shortest story they can tell is 20 minutes, they need to collect the business cards. They just do. And then the ask. Again, it is straightforward. It is direct. There is no hemming. There is no on. So, Senator so-and-so, will you support our bill and co-sponsor? That is a yes or no question. All right. And then you sit back and let them squirm. Now, if you are not talking to the legislator, staff cannot commit their boss to a yes or a no. All staff can say is, I will take this to my boss. And if they are thinking favorably, they may be able to say, the legislator has sponsored bills similar to this in the past. All right. And then you're going to allow the staffer to ask you any questions, wrap up, thank you, get the heck out of their office. Do not have a debrief meeting in the legislative office. Go down the hall. That's why God made the cafeteria. Well, be careful about the cafeteria. Always take a seat in a corner by the window so that you can see everyone coming in your line. And in the event legislators come in, you will need to adjust your conversation. And making it effective, ask straight to the point, ask the question, be silent, wait for the answer. If you get the answer you want, yes, Senator, I'm so glad you support us. Who else can you bring on board? Or what other offices should we visit? And because they are in that elite club, what do they know about the opposition? They're there, you're not. Have them tell you. Now, if they say no, then what will it take for you to support this? I remember talking to a Republican that was on a lot of my legislation. And when I asked that question, he said, hell would need to freeze over, donkeys would need to fly. I was like, okay. But again, I got that direct answer. Now, handouts. If you don't bring handouts, it's like canvassing. You weren't really there. So have a one-pager. At the top, the bill number and whether you want them to support it or oppose it. and then a couple of short salient paragraphs about why this is important to people in your district. If you can, put it on letterhead or fly the logos of all the organizations that are in the coalition and how they can get in contact with you if they have any questions. And then again, you won't be there if the staffer has to talk to their boss. So whatever you are leaving behind, that's the sales pitch that staffer will be able to pick up. And then again, you keep up the pressure. So you've done your lobby visits and you followed up, you thanked them, and you have gotten their position. And now you want to make sure that when the opposition comes to see them, they don't weasel out and decide to change their mind. So the petitions keep going. Normally, when we would have a lobby day, we would have people phoning in the office. So the people were very busy counting people who were calling, showing support for our position. And again, the indirect pressure, more letters to the editors and op-eds, and they're reading about it. And all this goes all the way up until finally there is the vote. Now, we used to do a lot of flash lobbies. We would have that phone calling petition. We get 5 or 6 people standing out on a real busy street corner. We have signs about our position. When people would come over, we'd ask if they'd be willing to call their legislator. We would put in their address, and then we would let them talk. That's the flash lobby. Those are fun. And that's that. So yeah, we got 9 minutes for Q&A.
Any questions? Please feel free to come off of mute if you have any questions. Ms. Andrea, thank you so much. You're such a wealth of knowledge and information in helping us to figure this out. And also, I appreciate that you're breaking it down for us in the most simplest form for us to get engaged and to mobilize others to take action as well. And that's so important because too often we hear people say, you have to lobby, but they don't get the instructions or information about how to lobby.
Right. Well, right. I have to lobby, but what do I do? What does that look like? Exactly. Exactly. So like I said, lobbying, it's an art and it's a science.
Yes.
Yeah, I didn't dwell a lot on the science. There's a big, long lobbying course that's only about lobbying. The science of lobbying is that when you go to lobby, the first thing you want to do is you want to build as much support for your legislation as possible. So is this a bill that's been previously introduced? Who are all the people that used to be on the bill? Those are the first people that go on your list that you're going to see. Who are people who have sponsored similar legislation? They go on that first list of people that you want to see. And then you're going to look at how big that list is. And now you're going to look at who would be a great get from the other side. So my legislation can be bipartisan. And then these days, we're lucky if we can find one. In the old days, I could normally have like 6 or 7. And there were just a set group of people that I would always go and see. And again, every once in a while, that's when I got the, what would it take for you to support this bill? Well, hell would have to freeze over and donkeys would be flying.
So there is a question in the chat thank you so much for this question. How to educate churches on civic literacy or other houses of worship and religious communities? What would you recommend to those that are on this call?
Churches, you are the most powerful voices in lobbying because you are automatically a member of a potentially very large group. So if you are from XYZ church, or you are the pastor of a church, the staff is automatically going, do I know that church? Oh my God, that's that really big giant church on the corner of da that always has the overflow parking lot full. So as members of a church, of a body, number one, you carry a certain level of moral authority that I don't have. I'm just old me. You don't have to be me. The other thing is they automatically recognize that you are not alone, that there are potentially a couple hundred people that are in support of this. And if you are a large denomination church, and there are a number of these churches in their district, oh boy, they better really pay attention to that. You are a phenomenal, powerful lobby. Churches, labor unions, Fraternal Order of Police, firefighters, all of them.
Absolutely. I agree. And I think it's important for people to also know the power of relationship and even coalition building and working in coalition with others. I mentioned earlier that we work together on Faithful Democracy. So there are people from many different religious traditions that are part of that coalition that are working together on specific issues. And so it's so important that people understand the significance of building relationships within your denomination and even outside of your denomination, because some of these efforts require multi-faith engagement. And that's what we saw even in January around voting rights, that, there were so many religious communities and even non-religious groups that were involved in it. And so it's good when the numbers come together to address this issue. And you talked about that earlier. I see that there is another question there. How successful have you been in persuading younger activists to follow this playbook?
Weirdly enough, very, very, very successful. There is, Justin is now 18, Justin started working with me when he was 16. Justin is probably one of the best lobbyists, natural, that I have ever met. We also run an internship program, and every year I get to train the 100+ interns, and we do 2 sessions every year on becoming effective citizen lobbyists. And they get an assignment to contact their representative. Normally it was on voting rights. Now there's a number of things. We would give them voting rights, climate, and we were doing a lot around the Equal Rights Amendment, equal pay for equal work. And what they had to do was write the leave behind that they would give to their legislator. That was one of their assignments. And people were always pretty excited about how good they felt about their ability to talk about the legislation after they had written the 1-page leave behind. Because now you've laid out the best parts and the strongest reasons why that legislator should support or oppose whatever it is that you have. And people were like, this is all there is to it. Yeah.
Yes. Well, Ms. Andrea, I just want to say thank you. There's so many thank yous that are coming up in the chat. If you had a question that was not asked, or if you had a question that you didn't pose in the chat or share with us, I encourage you to reach out to Andrea Miller. We put her email address in the chat bar for you all. I think this is, again, critically important that we engage in these issues and addressing these issues that impact all of our lives. These skills, as you can see, are transferable, right, to any topic. And so it's important that we pass this information along and share it with your friends. And so with that, I want to thank the Center for Social Justice and Reconciliation for partnering with us on this civic literacy policy advocacy training. I want to thank Ms. Andrea Miller and the Center for Common Ground for the work that you do to help educate our communities and to keep us going. And I want to thank all of you for taking time out of your evening to join us to develop or enhance your skills in civic literacy. We all have a role to play. We all make a difference. So whether you decide to lobby or whether you decide to do text banking or digital advocacy, there is something that you can do. And even if you simply pass on the information to someone else, that is critical to the movement as well. So I want to say thank you to all of you. I believe when I close the program, you'll receive a survey asking you questions about the information that you received this evening. And again, I see that Ms. Andrea, did you want to share that announcement real quick?
Really quickly, on Thursday at 8 p.m., Justice Sherry Beasley, who's running for U.S. Senate in North Carolina and basically is the front runner, will be joining us.
Oh, wonderful.
On Thursday night.
Wonderful. So Thursday night, so click on that link in the chat to register to join that conversation. And so I wish everyone a good evening. On behalf of the Center for Faith, Justice, and Reconciliation, we want to say thank you, and we hope that we will see you all again. Have a great evening.
Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Good night. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Andrea.
Thank you.
Take care, everybody.
Thank you so
Thank you
much,
so much.
Andrea. Thank you, Dr. Dance.
Thank you.